The night everything changed began as ordinarily as any other. I never imagined that a simple drive home would become the threshold between this life and something far beyond human comprehension. My name is Isabel Waltz, and what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's my testimony. I was driving home after a late meeting at the airline company where I worked as a commercial pilot. The roads were mostly empty, with only the occasional headlights piercing through the darkness of the rural Indiana countryside. Rain had started to fall, gradually at first, then growing heavier as I continued down the winding country road that led to my farmhouse. My thoughts drifted between the flight schedule for the upcoming week and the homework I needed to help my children with before bed. 17 years as a pilot had given me confidence behind any vehicle's controls, perhaps too much. I hadn't noticed how the rain had slicked the asphalt into a treacherous mirror, reflecting my headlights back at me in distorted patterns. The deer appeared without warning, a flash of terrified eyes caught in my headlights. I swerved instinctively, the way they teach us never to do. The next few moments played out with nightmarish clarity, yet somehow in slow motion. My sedan hydroplaned across the center line, directly into the path of oncoming headlights. I remember thinking with peculiar detachment, this is how it happens. Not fear, just a strange recognition, as if I'd always known this moment would come. The impact was cataclysmic. The sound of metal folding into metal was deafening, followed by the crystalline shattering of glass. My car spun violently, rolling once, twice, before coming to rest upside down in a drainage ditch beside the road. The airbag deployed with explosive force, slamming into my chest and face. In those final seconds of consciousness, I felt a crushing pressure across my torso, a stabbing agony in my legs, and the warm trickle of blood from somewhere above my eye. My last conscious thought was of my children waiting at home, wondering why Mom hadn't returned yet. Then darkness engulfed me. But that darkness was only the beginning. I became aware of myself again, but something was profoundly different. The pain had vanished completely. In its place was a peculiar sensation of lightness, of unburdening. It was as if I'd been carrying an invisible weight my entire life, and suddenly it had been lifted. My consciousness felt extraordinarily clear, clearer than it had ever been. The first thing I noticed was that I was somehow looking down at the accident scene. The flashing lights of emergency vehicles cast eerie red and blue pulses across the rain-slicked road. Paramedics moved with urgent purpose around two crumpled vehicles. With detached curiosity, I recognized my own silver sedan, now a mangled heap of twisted metal. The roof had been partially crushed, and the driver's side had collapsed inward at a sickening angle. I could see myself still trapped inside the vehicle. My body looked small and broken, blood matting my blonde hair against my face. The paramedics were working frantically, calling out medical terminology that, despite my lack of medical training, I somehow understood perfectly. One of them kept repeating, "We're losing her. We need to extract her now." I felt no attachment to that broken shell below me. It seemed like a discarded garment, no longer necessary. I was here, intact and aware, watching the drama unfold from this new vantage point. What struck me most powerfully in those moments was the acute enhancement of my perception. I could see with perfect clarity through the darkness and rain. I could hear conversations from inside the ambulance parked 30 feet away. I could even perceive the electrical impulses of the neurons firing in the brains of the emergency workers. It was as if all my senses had expanded beyond their physical limitations, allowing me to experience reality on an entirely different level. I noticed a state trooper on his radio, requesting a helicopter evacuation. Female, approximately 40 years old, multiple traumatic injuries, unresponsive. He gave my name from my driver's license, Isabel Waltz. It was strange hearing someone speak about me in the third person while I observed. The paramedics were cutting through the metal of my car with hydraulic tools. The sound should have been deafening, but it registered as merely interesting data in my expanded awareness. I watched them carefully extract my body, stabilizing my neck with a brace, strapping me to a backboard, all while monitoring vital signs that were growing increasingly unstable. "BP's dropping! We're losing her!" a female paramedic shouted. I felt a gentle tug then, drawing my attention away from the accident scene. Behind me, though behind isn't quite right, as directionality seemed different in this state, I became aware of a narrow pathway of light. It wasn't a physical light like sunlight or electric light. It was something else entirely, a luminescence that seemed to emanate from within reality itself, rather than from any discernible source. The pathway beckoned, not with words or gestures, but with an innate knowing that this was the way forward. As I turned my attention fully toward it, the accident scene began to fade from my awareness, like a dream upon waking. The sounds of urgent voices and equipment receded, replaced by a profound silence that wasn't the absence of sound, but rather something more fundamental. A silence that preceded sound itself. I moved toward the light. I didn't walk. I had no sense of having a body in the conventional sense, but rather I willed myself forward, and movement happened. The light grew stronger, enveloping me, drawing me in. There was no fear, only a deep curiosity and a sense of homecoming. As I entered fully into the light, the last threads of connection to the physical world below seemed to dissolve. The light became a tunnel or corridor of sorts, with walls of pure, shimmering luminescence. I was moving through it, accelerating, being drawn forward by some gentle but irresistible force. The sensation was one of profound freedom. All my life, I had been bound by physical laws, gravity, inertia, the limitations of flesh and bone. Now, those constraints had fallen away. I moved with the fluidity of thought itself, unhindered and unbounded. As I traveled through this corridor of light, I began to notice subtle shifts in the quality of my consciousness. Memories from my life began to surface, not in chronological order, but arranged according to some deeper pattern of meaning that I couldn't quite grasp. They weren't like normal memories. They were vivid, multi-sensory experiences, as if I were reliving them completely. I saw myself as a child, feeling the sunshine on my face for what seemed like the first time. I experienced again the moment I first sat in a cockpit, the exhilaration of my first solo flight, the indescribable joy of holding my firstborn child. But I also relived moments of failure and regret, the harsh words I had spoken to loved ones, opportunities to show kindness that I had missed. These memories simply the tapestry of choices and experiences that had constituted my life. I understood with perfect clarity how each decision had shaped not only my own existence, but had rippled outward, affecting countless others in ways I had never fully appreciated. The tunnel began to widen, the light growing even more brilliant, yet it didn't hurt my eyes or overwhelm my senses. Rather, it seemed to reveal things more clearly. I sensed I was approaching a threshold of some kind, a boundary between one state of being and another. Then, without warning, I was there. The transition was seamless, yet absolute. One moment I was traveling through the tunnel of light, and the next I had emerged into somewhere else. Calling it a place feels inadequate, as it implies location in physical space. This was more like a state of being, a realm of existence operating under entirely different principles. The first thing that struck me was the quality of light. It permeated everything, emanating not from any source but from reality itself. This light carried information, consciousness, meaning, as if light, knowledge, and love had been fused into a single essence. It illuminated not just physical forms, but the true nature of everything. I became aware that I wasn't alone. Presences surrounded me. I hesitate to call them beings or people, though they had distinct identities. They existed as patterns of light and consciousness rather than physical forms. Yet I recognized a profound familiarity in them. They communicated with me, not through words, but through direct transference of thought and feeling. Their voices resonated with love so pure and unconditional that it would have brought me to my knees had I possessed physical knees. "Welcome, Isabel," they communicated, though not in English or any human language. It was pure meaning, transmitted directly from consciousness to consciousness. I felt bathed in their welcome, their acceptance. There was no judgment, only recognition and love. They knew me, not just the person I had presented to the world, but the entirety of who I was, including parts of myself I had never acknowledged or had tried to hide. And they loved me completely, without reservation or condition. In their presence, I became aware of my own luminous form. I wasn't physical, yet I existed as a distinct pattern of light and energy. I could sense the essence of who I was, my consciousness, my soul, manifested as a unique configuration of this universal light. The environment around us, though environment fails to capture its nature, was fluid, responsive to thought and intention. It wasn't fixed like physical reality, but seemed to be in constant creation, shaped by collective consciousness. Colors existed that I had never seen before, hues that would be impossible in the physical spectrum. Structures of light and energy formed and reformed in patterns of mathematical perfection and infinite complexity. One of the presences moved closer to me, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that its consciousness merged more fully with mine. In that merging, I received a download of understanding about where I was and what was happening. I learned that what humans call reality is merely a thin slice of a much vaster existence. Physical reality, with its solid, seeming objects and linear time, is like a simplified interface, a way for consciousness to have certain types of experiences and learn certain types of lessons. But the fuller reality, this realm I now found myself in, was the more fundamental one. It was as if I had been living in a shadow world and had now stepped into the light that cast those shadows. The presence communicated that I was in a transitional state. My physical body had experienced what humans call clinical death, but the final separation had not yet occurred. I existed in the threshold between worlds. "There is something you must see," the presence communicated, "something you must understand." With that, my awareness expanded exponentially. It was as if I had been looking through a keyhole, and suddenly the entire door had dissolved, revealing a vast landscape beyond. I perceived not just this realm, but countless others, dimensions intersecting dimensions in a cosmic architecture of unfathomable complexity. I saw the universe, not as astronomers see it, but as it truly is, a living, conscious totality. Every galaxy, every star, every atom pulsed with consciousness. Nothing was truly inanimate. Everything participated in a great cosmic dance of creation and experience. I perceived the underlying patterns, the sacred geometry that formed the template upon which all existence was built, and I saw humanity's place within this vast tapestry. I understood that human beings are multidimensional creatures, their physical bodies just the densest layer of a complex energy structure that extends into other dimensions. I saw how souls enter physical existence, carrying with them purposes and intentions, lessons to learn, and gifts to give. Most overwhelmingly, I perceived the presence of what I can only describe as the Source, the fundamental creative intelligence from which all existence springs. It wasn't localized but omnipresent, not a being but being itself. As my awareness touched this source, I experienced a love so profound, so all-encompassing that it defies description. This wasn't the human version of love, with its conditions and limitations. This was cosmic love, the fundamental force that binds all existence together. In the presence of this love, I understood that there is no death, only transformation. Consciousness is never extinguished. It merely changes form. What humans fear as the end is merely a transition, a passage from one state of being to another. As these revelations cascaded through my expanded consciousness, I felt a gentle tug, not physical, but a call to attention. The presences around me became more focused, and I sensed a shift in the energy. It is time for you to choose, they communicated. I didn't understand at first, but then my awareness was drawn to two distinct paths that seemed to unfold before me. One led deeper into this realm of light, toward greater merger with the source. The other led back toward the physical realm I had left behind. Your physical form can still sustain your consciousness, they explained. You may return if that is your choice, or you may continue onward. The decision is yours. Images appeared in my consciousness, my children, my unfinished work, relationships that still had potential for growth and healing. I saw the ripples of my possible future actions, the lives I might touch, the service I might render, but I also perceived the indescribable peace and expansiveness of continuing onward, of merging more fully with the source, of experiencing existence beyond the limitations of physical form. The choice was presented without pressure or expectation. There was only love and acceptance for whatever I would decide. Before I could form a response, one of the presences moved forward. Its light seemed different from the others, more intense, more personal somehow. As it drew near, I sensed that this was not just any presence. Isabel, it communicated, and the transmission carried such perfect love that my entire being resonated in response. There is more for you to see before you choose. With that, the reality around me shifted once again. The realm of light receded, not disappearing but becoming the background, rather than the foreground of my experience. In its place appeared a new environment, one that chilled my formless being to its core. I found myself in what appeared to be a small cylindrical room with walls of an indefinable substance. They weren't quite solid, but weren't exactly energy either. Something in between, something fundamentally wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The walls were dotted with small doors of varying sizes, each with a flat, high-gloss red handle that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the dim light. The ceiling glowed with a translucent white light, behind which I could perceive a slow-moving liquid the color of blood, circulating in ominous patterns. The floor beneath me, though I had no physical feet to stand on, was bare and featureless. But the most striking aspect of this place wasn't its physical properties. It was the absolute absence of the love and light I had just experienced. This place was defined by that absence, a void not of matter, but of meaning, hope, and connection. Most terrifying of all, I realized I was alone. The presences that had accompanied me were gone. The constant background awareness of the source had vanished. For the first time since my consciousness had separated from my body, I felt isolated, cut off, abandoned. Hello, I tried to call out, though I had no voice in the conventional sense. My attempted communication fell flat, absorbed by the oppressive emptiness of the space. Then I sensed, rather than saw, a presence at the periphery of my awareness. Unlike the luminous beings from before, this presence was shadowed, indistinct. It stood with its back toward me, radiating not love, but utter indifference. Where am I? I directed my thought toward the presence. Where you have placed yourself, came the flat response, delivered without turning to acknowledge me. A chill ran through my consciousness. Is this hell? I asked, dreading the answer. The presence gave what might have been a slight shake of its head. No. Purgatory then? I ventured, recalling distant Sunday school lessons. At this, the presence emitted something like a cold chuckle. No. Then what is this place? I demanded, fear growing within me. This is separation, the presence stated simply. This is what you chose, moment by moment, day by day, when you turned away from the source. How long will I be here? I asked. That is up to you, the presence replied. And then, without further acknowledgement, it was gone, or at least withdrew its attention from me so completely that it might as well have vanished. Left alone, I became acutely aware of a mounting horror within me. This place existed outside of time as I had understood it. There was no progression, no change, no hope of eventual release. It was a state of eternal now, with the full awareness that now would never end. As this realization dawned on me, I felt something I can only describe as a white-hot burning deep within my soul. It wasn't physical pain. I had no body to feel physical sensations, but something far more fundamental. It was the agony of separation, of being cut off from the source of all life and love. With this pain came understanding. I saw how every action of my life, every choice, every thought had been directing me toward this state of separation. Not because I was being punished, but because this was the natural consequence of the orientation of my will. I had not been condemned to this place. I had constructed it, choice by choice, by turning away from love, from truth, from the divine presence that had always been offering itself to me. The weight of this understanding crushed me. I felt as if I were at the bottom of an infinite ocean, the pressure of all existence bearing down upon me. Regret washed through me in waves, not for the things I had done wrong by human standards, but for the countless moments I had missed the presence of the divine in my life, for all the times I had chosen the shadow over the substance. Despite having no physical form, I tried to move, to escape this crushing revelation, but there was nowhere to go. The red-handled doors remained immobile, and I had no means to open them anyway. The blood-like substance continued its slow circulation above me, indifferent to my suffering. In desperation, I turned to the vast knowledge that had somehow been downloaded into my consciousness during my time in the realm of light. I began attempting to solve complex mathematical equations, to recite poetry I had never known in life, to work through philosophical problems that had stumped humanity's greatest minds. Perhaps if I could demonstrate my worth, my intelligence, my potential, I would be released from this place. But each solution, each verse, each insight simply echoed in the emptiness, changing nothing. The knowledge itself felt hollow now, stripped of the context of love that had made it meaningful. Finally, exhausted by my futile efforts, I surrendered. This is a just consequence, I acknowledged to the void. This is where I belong. I am here because of what I chose in life. The moment of that surrender marked a shift. The red liquid above me began to lighten in color, almost imperceptibly at first, then more rapidly. As I watched, it transformed from blood red to a luminous crimson, then to a radiant pink, and finally to a pure, translucent white. I cannot free myself, I acknowledged. I need help. With that admission, I felt myself being lifted up, passing through the now white substance in the ceiling. It enveloped me not as a liquid, but as a purifying presence, washing away the burning pain that had consumed me. As I emerged on the other side, I found myself in a vast open field of the most vibrant green grass I had ever encountered. The sky above was a perfect crystalline blue, unmarred by clouds. The colors here were so intense, so real that they made the world I had known seem like a faded photograph by comparison. The presence I had encountered in the cylindrical room was here too, but transformed. No longer indifferent, it radiated care and compassion. You have passed through, it communicated, its meaning clear and loving. Am I out? I asked, still not quite believing the transformation. Yes, came the gentle reply. Is this real? I questioned, overwhelmed by the beauty and peace surrounding me. More real than anything you have known, the presence assured me. Peace flowed through me, not just an absence of distress, but a positive presence of wholeness and harmony. I understood that what I had passed through was not punishment, but purification. The cylindrical room had been a place of reckoning, where I had confronted the truth of my own choices and their consequences. The blood-like substance had transformed because I had finally recognized my need for redemption, a redemption I could not accomplish for myself. As I basked in this understanding, the field around me seemed to pulse with life and meaning. Every blade of grass, every particle of air vibrated with purpose. I sensed that I was being prepared for something, though I didn't know what. The loving presence drew nearer. You have seen what separation means, it communicated. Now you must see what awaits those who choose connection. Before I could respond, my surroundings shifted again. The green field dissolved, and I found myself in what I can only describe as the presence of pure light. But this wasn't just illumination, it was living light, conscious light, light that knew me and loved me with perfect, unconditional love. I recognized this light. It was the source I had glimpsed earlier, but now I was fully immersed in its presence. In that immersion, I understood with absolute clarity that this was what humans had always been trying to name when they spoke of God. Not a being among beings, but being itself, the ground of all existence, the creator and sustainer of everything that is. In the presence of this light, I saw the truth of myself, both the beauty and the brokenness. I saw how I had been created for communion with this light, how every human soul was designed to reflect and embody it in unique ways. I saw how my separation had never been what the source desired, but what I had chosen through my turning away. Most powerfully, I saw how this light, this God, had never abandoned me, even in my darkest moments of separation. The love had always been there, offering itself, waiting for my recognition and acceptance. As this understanding flooded through me, I felt the light not just surrounding me but entering me, filling every part of my consciousness with its radiance. It was healing, restoring, making whole what had been fragmented. In that union, I experienced joy beyond anything I had known or imagined. Joy so intense, it would have been unbearable in a physical body. It was ecstasy in the truest sense, a standing outside of oneself to participate in something infinitely greater. Time ceased to have meaning. I existed in an eternal moment of communion with the divine light, experiencing a fullness of being that made my previous existence seem like a shadow or a dream. Then, gently but clearly, I sensed a communication from the light. "You must return." "Return?" I questioned, unable to comprehend leaving this state of perfect union. "Your time has not yet come," the light communicated. "There is work for you to do, testimony to bear, love to share." Images appeared in my consciousness, my children, my colleagues, strangers I had yet to meet. I saw how my experience could bring hope, healing, and understanding to others. I saw specific moments in a future that had not yet unfolded, where my presence would make a crucial difference. But how can I go back, I asked. How can I return to the limitations and pain of physical existence after experiencing this? "You will not go alone," came the response. "What you have seen and known here will go with you. You will carry this light back into the world." I understood then that returning wasn't a punishment or a lesser path. It was a mission, a calling, an opportunity to bring something of this realm back into the physical world that so desperately needed it. I felt myself being prepared for the return journey. The light began to recede, not abandoning me but changing form, becoming something I could carry within me rather than something in which I was immersed. As I traveled, I carried with me not just memories, but a transformed understanding of reality. I knew now that what humans call life and death are not opposites, but different expressions of the same continuous existence. I knew that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but merely channeled through it. I knew that love is not just an emotion, but the very structure of reality itself. With each passing moment, I could feel myself drawing closer to the physical world, to the limitations of space and time, to the pain and struggle of embodied existence. But I also carried within me the certainty of what I had experienced, a certainty that would sustain me through whatever was to come. As the boundary between worlds grew thinner, I sensed one final communication from the light. "I am with you always, until the end of the age." Then, with a jolt that seemed to reverberate through every level of my being, I returned. Pain was the first sensation that greeted me, searing, all-encompassing pain that shot through every cell of my body. After the expansive freedom of formless consciousness, being confined once more to flesh and bone felt like being imprisoned in a too small cage. Every breath was agony as my damaged lungs struggled to function. My broken bones screamed in protest at even the slightest movement. Harsh fluorescent lights assaulted my eyes, a poor substitute for the living light I had just left behind. Beeping monitors, urgent voices, the smell of antiseptic, all of it felt abrasive, overwhelming to senses that had just experienced the harmonious perfection of another realm. "Ms. Waltz? Isabel? Can you hear me?" A face appeared above me, a doctor, her expression intense with concentration and a hint of disbelief. "If you can hear me, blink twice." I managed to blink, my eyelids feeling like lead weights. The next several hours passed in a blur of medical procedures, examinations, and gradually decreasing sedation. I learned the extent of my injuries: multiple broken bones, internal bleeding, punctured lungs, traumatic brain injury. By all medical understanding, I should not have survived, much less returned to consciousness so quickly. In the months that followed my return, I found that my experience had transformed not just my understanding of death, but of life itself. The veil between worlds seemed thinner now, allowing glimpses of that perfect light to shine through even the most ordinary moments. I noticed it in my children's laughter, in the dawn breaking over Indiana cornfields, in the faces of passengers as I guided them safely through the skies once again. My colleagues at the airline were skeptical at first, but something in the certainty of my calm, even during the most turbulent flights, gave them pause. "You fly differently now," my co-pilot remarked one day, "like you know something the rest of us don't." The physical scars from my accident remained, reminders etched into flesh of that threshold I had crossed. Sometimes, in quiet moments when pain flared in my partially healed bones, I would close my eyes and reconnect with that limitless light I had experienced. It wasn't memory exactly, but a living connection that transcended time and space. Medical professionals attempted to explain away my experience: oxygen deprivation, hallucinations from trauma, the brain's final comfort mechanism. But their theories felt hollow against the profound reality I had witnessed. How could I explain that the world beyond death was more real, not less, than the one we navigate daily? I no longer fear death, though I've developed a deeper appreciation for the precious gift of life. Each day now feels purposeful, a canvas on which to paint with the colors of compassion and understanding I brought back from beyond. I've started a support group for others who've had similar experiences, creating a safe haven where people can share their journeys without judgment. Sometimes, when I look into their eyes as they describe their own encounters with that boundless light, I see recognition spark, a knowing that connects us beyond words. We're not meant to fully understand it while we're here, I often tell them, but we can carry it within us, like lanterns in the dark, illuminating the path for others. And in those moments of shared understanding, I feel the presence of that light once again, whispering through the thin places between worlds. I am with you always.